When Borderlands first launched a decade ago, its mix of shooting, looting, and leveling up was so different as to almost be confusing. Is it a shooter or an RPG? The answer is yes. Now, there are a ton of games about shooting and looting together, but while the developers at Gearbox could have easily chased their contemporaries, they've instead opted to make Borderlands 3 as true to form as possible. And even though it isn't exactly new, it's clear that nothing feels quite like the insanity and ridiculousness of Borderlands.
I'll pre-order your tombstone just in case.
The story follows a new group of characters as they join the ranks of Lilith and the Crimson Raiders to find the next set of vaults. Your team is trying to get to these vaults before the Calypso Twins, a new pair of villains who have used their siren powers to convince the bandits of Pandora that they're gods. The twins, Troy and Tyreen, present themselves as obnoxious streamers, but thankfully they're not so irritating as to actually get tiresome.
But now we're all family, and family is forever.
Familiar friends from past games return, including previously playable characters like Zero, but there are some new favorites like Balex, an AI shoved into a pink teddy bear voiced by Ice-T.
Yeah, back in my whip. Don't look like it now, but this thing used to be one fine-ass vessel. Shame I had to crash it.
The tale has some dramatic turns, but the lighthearted nature keeps anything from hitting too hard. While most characters don't have a ton of depth, the dialogue is generally wedged between cacophonies of explosions, so it makes sense to keep things moving, rather than stopping to ponder someone's motivations. The potty-mouthed humor is as divisive as ever, but most of the time it works in the game's favor. There are just a few side quests, in particular, that run their jokes into the ground, long after they stopped being funny.
You killed a succulent alpha skag with a big sock? Good sucking!
For the first time in the series, Borderlands 3 has you planet hopping with a spaceship as your home base. You take the fight to city streets beneath war-torn skyscrapers on Promethea, while Eden 6 has you crisscrossing dinosaur-infested bayous. These planets aren't fully open world, but are split into multiple sections, and there's enough diversity to set these subregions apart. Most zones are fairly large, including some that you only venture into for side quests. However, one of the bigger disappointments in all of this is that Pandora has lost the sense of diversity introduced in Borderlands 2 just to become the desert planet once again. Meanwhile, Athenas, which stands out visually from the other worlds, is just a brief stop, constrained to one relatively narrow path. Side quests come up regularly throughout your travels and often serve as welcome diversions without taking you too far out of your way. Unfortunately, there are a few times when you'll come across quests that have you retread levels you just completed, and despite dialogue that tries to frame it differently, these moments always feel like a drag. Most of the time, quests do feel worthwhile though, whether it's doing a coffee run for caffeine-dependent soldiers or helping a hopeless wannabe attempt a series of stunts.
Wait! I got this! I don't got this!
If you want to go farther off the beaten path, there's a series of ongoing activities to keep an eye out for as well, including finding audio logs from the first Vault Hunter, scavenging dead claptraps for parts, and turning off enemy propaganda broadcasts. One of the big improvements to Borderlands 3 is the ability to grab ledges and climb to higher ground, giving you more freedom to explore. This is used well through most of the game, but a few of these optional objectives require pinpoint platforming that's still quite awkward in first person. Rather than presenting an interesting sense of challenge, they just feel annoying to get through. Of course, guns rule the day, and as in past games, there's a ton of variation in how each gun feels, how they sound, and what they can do, with common attributes centered around different gun manufacturers. Movement and gunplay feel tighter and more fluid all around, further accentuating the differences. You might gravitate towards a revolver with exploding bullets one minute, then switch to an assault rifle that sprays out bullets the next. A new addition comes in the form of alt-fire for many weapons. This reduces the number of elemental guns you need to carry, as you can often swap between two different elements on the same gun. Or you might come across a sniper rifle that also has a shotgun underbarrel, giving you the best of both worlds. Most of the elemental effects from the past games are here, but slag is out, replaced by radiation, which transfers among groups of enemies and eventually causes them to explode. There are so many varied effects and unique properties that even dozens of hours after you've started, you'll likely come across something you've never seen before, like a corrosive gun that creates an acidic cloud, or a grenade that spawns proximity mines that launch icicles, simultaneously freezing enemies while tossing them into the air. The weapons are Borderlands 3's biggest strength, and they create a sense of joyful chaos. With so many great options, it's inevitable that you'll find favorites that you'll want to keep forever, but as time marches on, the RPG mechanics eventually make that gear obsolete. While it's cool to keep trying new things, and there are often similar guns at higher levels, some weapons are just so unique that you never come across anything like it again. And it's a shame that there's no way to upgrade and hang on to something you really like.
Kill your
The other downside to the diversity of the arsenal is the sheer pace at which Borderlands throws new guns in your face. It's all about the loot, and there are weapons everywhere of varied value and rarity. There's a lot within the user interface to let you quickly compare and assess weapons, trash what you're done with, and sell in bulk, but it's still not enough to keep up with what amounts to a fire hose blasting new guns at you every minute. Within the first couple hours, your brain will be trained to ignore white-level gear entirely, and you'll develop all sorts of internal benchmarks to decide what's worth picking up without really looking at most of it. Even when your backpack is fully upgraded, it fills up fast, so it's easy to find yourself heading back to vending machines after nearly every mission, not to buy new guns, but to sort through your inventory and clear space. Thankfully, there's also a bank to store old favorites, although one of the sorting options is currently bugged. Plus, the ship also has a lost loot machine that retrieves a limited number of rare items in case you missed something or don't have space to pick it up. Aside from guns and grenades, the other big thing to differentiate your playstyle is your class, and Borderlands 3 has done a lot to diversify how each class plays. We went with the gunner, Mose, whose action skill allows you to jump into a mech to lay waste to enemies, and it works great for defensive purposes too, as you're protected from damage. Where past games require you to level up quite a bit before seeing differences in your action skill, Borderlands 3 gives you a lot of options up front. For instance, you can equip Mose's mech with different weapons like miniguns, railguns, or grenade launchers. Very quickly, you can also unlock things like a bubble shield or a rocket launcher, and we went the explosive route, increasing benefits from doing splash damage and eventually equipping our mech with a small nuke. A class mod that has a high chance to spawn mini grenades whenever we get a headshot is just icing on the cake, and that's just one branch of one of the 4 classes. Depending on how thoroughly you explore, Borderlands 3 can take between 30 to 50 hours to complete, and while it can definitely drag a little towards the end, there are interesting developments to keep you going. The post-game offers not only a take on New Game Plus, but an optional mayhem mode that can inflict all sorts of effects that essentially make enemies much stronger and make you weaker. It certainly justifies the name as you can die quickly and frequently, but there's a lot of legendary loot as well. While Borderlands 3 is designed for up to 4 people to play together, it plays just fine if you want to go solo. So it's just a matter of preference, particularly if you want to follow the story on your own. If you don't know anyone playing, there is a matchmaking option, but for the story, it's a bit of a crapshoot whether you'll wind up in a good situation or just with someone who's gone AFK. What is great for matchmaking, though, are the proving grounds. Here, you can get together with a group of strangers, have fun blasting through enemies together, and walk away with a mountain of cash. Visually, Borderlands 3 updates its comic-inspired style without any major changes. However, some of the long-time flaws are still present as well, such as textures loading in a bit slowly and stiff character animation. The game runs well most of the time, but menus can be sluggish, particularly in multiplayer, and there are some minor bugs that persist despite recent patches. One thing that is unquestionably great, though, is the game's music. Created by a team of experienced composers, there's a lot of variety in different genres to make each location stand out, and interactive elements allow for songs to ebb and flow through different situations. Rather than trying to latch on to current trends, Borderlands 3 stands confident in the fact that there's still no other game that does exactly what this series does so well. The sheer creativity and inventiveness presented in its arsenal is hard to match, and while the humor may not be for everyone, it keeps the gameplay in perspective as we're all just here to have a good time. It isn't as big of a leap forward as Borderlands 2, but it's well refined, and there's a lot to experiment with to keep you coming back for more.
Yes! We're free of those horrible calming voices!
Easy Allies reviews are made possible by generous viewers just like you. If you like what you see, check out patreon.com/easyallies to help us make more. For just $1 a month, you can gain access to weekly updates, spoiler discussions, and exclusive shows.